Passion without regard is just appetite. You're just greedy. You're selfish. Intensity without consistency is not depth, it's just weather. Warmth without responsibility is not safety, it's just comfort for them. And chemistry without character is one of those most, I guess, one of the most seductive traps on earth. This guy had been defending the big moments, the peaks, the highs, the rare thing, the moments that felt impossible to explain to anyone else. And then the small failure happened. Something they should have done, something they should have remembered, something they should have cared enough to carry and to say something about or respond to, or, you know? Now, of course, I gave something that was enormous, but just think of the small things. Maybe it was you're together for a year and maybe they don't, maybe it's an anniversary that you thought. Maybe you talked about your 1 year anniversary for the last 5 months, and when the anniversary comes along and they say absolutely nothing and they remember nothing and they buy nothing. All of those things happen. Maybe it was you bought them something on their birthday, your birthday comes along and they buy you nothing and they don't say anything. Not something enormous, right? Not some enormous sacrifice, not some impossible demand, just a simple act that would have said, I see you, you exist, you matter, I remember. What matters to you matters at least a little bit to me. And they failed. And when they failed, right, something finally clicked in him. Not like lightning, more like a sick little silence inside of the pit of his stomach. Like some part of him finally said, oh, so this is what it it actually is. And trust me, that was a horrible moment. But it was also very clean and simple. Just the type of thing he needed to hear or see. Because the imagination has less room to work at that point. There's no excuse. Because, let's see, before that, you see, he could have explained away everything. They were busy, they were overwhelmed, they were scared, they cared in their own way. But when someone fails at something very, very basic, all those explanations, right? They start sounding ridiculous. They sound like protection, and that's exactly what they are. Not protection of the truth, protection from the truth. That is why the simple failure became a gift to him. Not because it didn't hurt him, right? It hurt more because it was so normal and so regular and so small. After everything, you couldn't even do that? And that's the part that actually burns. Not the thing itself. The ratio, the difference between what you gave and what they couldn't even imagine or manage. The humiliation of it all. But that is, my friend, clarity for this type of a person. That is the mercy hidden inside of the actual insult. Because now you have a choice. You can keep saying, but remember the peak? Or you can finally say, look at that pattern. And if you're honest, the pattern has probably been talking for a long time. You just didn't want to hear it. Oh, you saw it. You just made up stories about it. Why that mind keeps defending the peak against the pattern. People love to make this sound simple. Just move on. Just block them. Know your worth. Fine, cute. But that does not explain what is happening inside of someone who actually got attached. The mind is not only remembering the person, it's also defending the peak. The peak is the highest version of that connection. And that peak might have been very, very high. Wasn't on top of a hill, it was a mountain. And he never been to that mountain before. The best night of his life, the best conversation, the best touch, the best look, where you felt maybe that the person looked into your soul and there you were. Hey, hi. And that person gave you that look like, I see you. Oh, nobody ever saw you before? Well, guess what? I see you. The version that made everything feel possible. And once your mind decides the peak is the truth, everything else has no choice but to fall in line. And everything else that doesn't line up, just a misunderstanding. The inconsistencies become fair, the selfishness becomes trauma, the distance becomes confusion, the low effort becomes they're just not good at this, or they're broken, so they couldn't see, they didn't know, they were splitting. You start translating disrespect into complexity. That's dangerous because some things are not complex, some things are just telling. But when the peak felt real, your mind does not want the pattern to win because if you admit the pattern, you feel like you have to lose the peak. And you don't want to lose the peak. Been waiting for this peak all my life. Maybe you got that song in your head. All my life, I pray for someone like you. And I thank God that I finally found you. And that was the peak. Because the peak was not just a memory, it was proof that you could still feel that way. Proof that someone could want you like that. Proof that life could still surprise you. Proof that something could still cut through the boredom, the grief, the routine, the emotional tiredness of being alive. That is why people cling. That's why people climb. They're not always clinging to the person, they're clinging to what the person seemed to prove. That is why you can know someone is bad for your peace and still miss them.